record here so that we can send out this.
Here, I'll print that before you take it. This is, yeah. By the way, now that I can read those three names, it'd be a good idea if you join us. And and Connie Orr is going to introduce the interviewee.
Yes.
Don't give anything away, Connie.
No, John, cut this out of the paper. If the examiner can put it in the paper, I can read it here. John Grylls was born and educated in Lakefield. He lives on one end of the Regent Street, and King and I live down on the other end of Regent. John went to graduate from Lakefield Public and High School. Then he went into Peterborough Normal School and taught school at, is it Pine Grove or Garbets?
Lang first,
Lang.
then Garbets.
Then Garbets. And after a few years, he decided to move on and went to Toronto, and you were in the Pickering area somewhere.
No, I was in Scarborough.
See?
I was in Oak Ridges before I was in Scarborough. All right.
Okay.
Neil will get all that out.
And John was in the Toronto area for I don't know how many years. I couldn't phone him and ask him, so you see, I'll just ask him here. How many years did you teach in Toronto?
Well, I was in Scarborough 26 and a half and 3.5 at Oak Ridges. So, and then 2 at Lang and 2 at Garbets.
So, and he was a busy man with all the other things he did. But John retired and came home when his mother wasn't well, and after his father died. His father worked for the Ontario Hydro for a number of years in the powerhouse. But if you think John came home and retired, no, he didn't. He did all kinds of things. He was very, very busy with the library. He had his music. He supplied music in a number of churches, Young's Point, Warsaw, Lakefield, and he also is very interested in pets. John's always had a dog. John has helped, and this year he took up walking on the New Millennium Trail. He walks miles every morning. He also was very interested in the young people around his area and has helped all kinds of them who needed some coaching and just to get along, and John's done that. John, dogs, you'll see him out walking with his dog. His music has taken up a very, very large part of his life. His Aunt Laura was a piano teacher and taught for a number of years. So the music in the Grylls family comes from his father's side of the family. His other grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Herb Brown, had an ice cream parlor on the corner of Regent and Queen for a number of years. The only ice cream place we had in Lakefield, except the commercial, and we could go to the commercial and get an ice cream cone. Nielsen's.
Nielsen's, yeah.
But John has always been more than willing to help everybody that needs help. And I can tell you very honestly that there are some Lakefield seniors that certainly wouldn't have survived nearly as long if John Grylls hadn't gone in and checked on them every year and did a lot of things for them. And we're most thankful, John, for all the things you're doing in Lakefield right now and being a part of this organization. If you don't know the date, ask John. And we will now, you can just fire the questions at us.
Right.
Okay.
Neil's
Oh, no, Neil's going to do it.
Neil's gonna do it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can go and sit
Well,
down.
thank you very much, Connie. My name is Neil Watson, and I've been asked to interview John this evening. I had a number of questions that I was going to ask him, but you covered them all. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming. And John, one thing I'd ask is that you speak up and not mumble. Anyone who knows John.
I'll do my best.
Knows that he has a very distinct, clear voice. Had he not gone into the teaching profession, I'm sure he could have made it as a radio announcer, and he wouldn't have needed the airwaves.
No.
John, it's a pleasure. I don't know how you get all these people out. Are you paying them?
Bribing.
Driving, yes, I
Yeah.
yes.
Have you
Brought my own cheering section.
are you throwing a cheese and sherry party at your place after or something?
Yes.
We're all invited. Because it's as a compliment to you, it certainly is a tribute to have a number of people come out like this to hear you interviewed. So I hope, and we hope, that you have something important to say.
Fire away.
John, let's talk about your family a little. When did you come to Canada, the Grylls family?
Well, they came from Egliskerry, Cornwall, which is right near Launceston. It's about as big as Young's Point. And my great-great-grandfather died. And he left the family estates and all that. It wasn't an estate, a big farm and all this sort of business, to his firstborn son. Well, the firstborn son immediately sold it, everything, sold out, moved to London, bought a school for his two old maid daughters, and set them up in a school in London. Now, my great-grandfather was the second one in the pecking order, so he got 2 one-way tickets to Canada, all right, and a little bit of capital. The rest of them got zilch, and when I visited them, they kept reminding me that their great-grandfather didn't even get a cow. I heard more about that cow. I was really thought I'd like to go out and buy them one.
Send them one over.
Send them one over.
But it might have got hoof-mouth disease. Where would you be now?
Yeah. My great-grandfather married a lady by the name of Annie Down, and they were married by the Reverend H.A. Simcoe, who was the youngest son of the first Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada, who died when he was very young. Lady Simcoe lived in Egliskerry, and they knew her. She lived to be 90-something, and they knew Lady Simcoe. And the Reverend Mr. Simcoe wanted to get as many Cornish boys as possible to Canada, and he established a school, one for girls and one for boys, and they taught them how to live in Canada, how to do this, how to do that. So that's how they got. They came in April of 1853.
Yeah, you came in April 1853.
Yeah.
That's good. And why did you come to the Lakefield area?
Well, there were Downs that were still out here, and they were out in Smith Township, and they went there first.
They were a relative or something?
Yeah, my great-grandmother's maiden name was Down. They were relatives of hers. And then they rented a farm.
I see. And where did they, like when they came to this area, they rented a farm. And from whom did they rent?
They rented it from Joe Nelson.
Not one of our Nelsons.
Our Joe.
Well, and so they were helping to fuel the hierarchy that we are paying homage to shortly.
That's absolutely right.
And I've no doubt the Browns have the Grylls have a high regard for the Nelsons. How was he as a landlord?
Well, first of all, the government did a survey of farms, and I found it quite by accident in the Peterborough archives. I wasn't looking for it, and I made a copy of it. And it didn't mean anything to me, how many bushels to the acre, acres to the bushel, or whatever. It wasn't mean a thing to me. So I took it down to Bob Hunter, who'd farmed all his life, and he said he was running a pretty good operation. So there wasn't a very nice house they lived in. The roof leaked. And so he went to Joe Nelson one day, and he's, look, is there anything you can do to fix the roof? Joe Nelson said, if 5 cents would make you comfortable, I would be against paying it. So there we go.
Well, I can understand that, John. I had a fella ask me to buy him a drink the other day. He said, will you buy me a beer, Neil? And I said, if I was giving away free beer, you'd be president of the Lakefield Temperance Society.
So anyway, there we
So
go.
John is, he's a little dubious about the Nelsons. But that's a wonderful story, and I
Well,
thank you for sharing that.
all
with us.
right.
But the Nelsons chose good land, you know.
Yeah,
That's
well,
why
I know.
yeah.
I know. It was a good farm.
Good farm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now let's talk about your mother, who I knew quite well, as I did your father. What was your mother's maiden name?
Brown.
Uh-huh.
Mamie Brown, and they were Irish Protestants from County Armagh in Ireland.
And one fellow who was well known in the village of Lakefield was your grandfather,
Yes.
Mr. Herb Brown.
Herb Brown.
And
Yeah.
he was a friend to many. I'm sure there are many people here who have did business with your grandfather.
Yes, I imagine
Would
they
you
did.
tell us a little bit about him? Why was he so well known?
Well, I don't know. He was a very fantastic man. First of all, I remember once I asked him, now this was when he was in 80s, he was in his 80s. And I said, what do you think was the greatest mistake you ever made in your life? Now most men would say, well, gee, you know, let me think about that. He said in the provincial election of 1919, I didn't vote for the Conservatives. I voted for the United Farmers of Ontario, E.C. Drury. He said they didn't do a darn thing for the farmers. So he said, that was the biggest mistake I ever made. So anyway, when I left the party one time to vote for the Reformers and then, God help me, the Alliance, I think the Bible calls that whoring after strange gods. All right? Well, anyway, my aunt kept reminding me of what she'd say. Now, you remember what your grandfather said? See, I made the same mistake twice. He only made it once.
Your grandfather and your grandmother, they ran a restaurant, and it was really a drop-in center for those in
Oh, yes.
Lakefield.
Oh, yes.
It was used by many. They were quite popular because your grandfather would let you run up a tab.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Could you, and also the Grove boys would run up a tab, and you counseled him one time against that type of activity, did you not? You were
Yes,
worried about him and his money, were you not?
Yes, I said, no, I said, Grandpa, you've got an awful lot of money on the books here. You've got to start calling some of this money in. So, he wouldn't worry about it. So finally he got sick of me telling him. He said, bring the books here. He said, what's the first name on the book? I said, Rick Krang. He said his father is J.H. Krang, the stockbroker. Now, you don't think that J.H. Krang is good for $2. And he went down the list, and he knew what every one of them did.
The next guy whose father was president of Facel
Yes.
Pictures. Gibson.
Gibson, yes.
Jack Gibson. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was probably good for it too.
Yes,
And
oh,
if
yeah.
he didn't, he could give your grandpa a tissue that he could wipe the tears with. I remember, John, your grandfather, he was a good businessman. Besides the restaurant, he ran the booth at the hockey arena, as you know.
Yes.
Well, I got to let you in on a little ploy. I was too young, but it was well known that your grandfather would load a sleigh up and carry chocolate bars and hot dogs and so on over, and the bulk food over to the booth every night. And a couple boys who were 6 years older than me, they would say, I'll help you, Mr. Brown, I'll help you pull your sleigh. And one would get each side of them, helping them pull the sleigh, and 2 or 3 others would be behind kicking the chocolate bars off into the snow. So if I had been in on it, I'd pay you for those bars right now, but I wasn't. And I know that your grandfather probably knew exactly what was happening, because
Yes.
he was not in any sense of the word naive,
No.
but he seemed to let them away with it anyhow. Your father, what did he do for a living, John?
He was with Ontario Hydro. He started out in the Royal Bank, And when he was overseas, he came down with the flu and it turned to pneumonia. He wasn't very well.
Well,
The
was he
doctor-
traveling overseas or?
Oh, he was in the tank corps.
Oh, this would be in the 1914 to 18.
Yes.
I see.
First unpleasantness. Yes. And
I knew that's what it was, but I wanted you to tell
Oh,
me.
all right, all right. First unpleasantness.
No, the First World War.
Yeah, First World War, yeah. And when he came back, the doctor said he should get work outside. So he became a purchasing agent for the Canada Cement Company. He bought high explosives and blasting caps and all that, and he was in charge of, you know, somebody wants to stick a dynamite to building, then you come to see Sam Grylls. He gives it to you, all right? Well, then the Canada Cement folded, but they kept the office staff on for a year at half pay. He was a half-pay officer. And then he worked all over. He worked at the Gordon Boat Company. And Mother and I lived in a tent all summer in Bobcaygeon. Yeah.
Oh, he worked up in Bobcaygeon with the
With the Gordon Boat
They were
Company.
originally in Lakefield,
Yes,
were they
I know.
not? And then they moved to Cajun.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh-huh.
And he got a job keeping books for a construction company in Parry Sound. We stayed down here. He went to Parry Sound. We went up to see him once. We went to see the Quints. They had just been born. Then he got on with Ontario Hydro in November 1936.
What
And he
was?
worked with
Did
them.
you see the Quints, John?
Yes.
What was your impression of them?
I don't know. They were little weak
Well,
kids.
they'd be Catholic for one thing.
Yeah. They were French Catholics.
What would Grandpa Brown think of that?
Well, Grandpa Brown, all right, now just a second. Grandpa Brown's, I gotta get this straight now. His mother's name was Isabella Kells, and she came from Cavan. Now, they were very famous people in Cavan. You know what they were? They were blazers. The Kells were Cavan blazers. Yeah. They used to just burn them right out. Tie them onto the toll gates.
And was Grandpa an Orangeman?
And was he an orange? Oh, Lord, yes. He was an orange. But listen, the Browns and the Kells, and my grandmother Brown's maiden name was Nugent, they thought that the greatest event in the world took place on July the 12th, 1690, when the Prince of Orange defeated James II and established the Protestant succession to the throne. There was no other. He celebrated it every year, the 12th of July.
Grandpa Herb.
Yes, he went to every Orange Walk, even if he could only go a couple blocks, drop out of the parade, and get in a car and speed off to wherever they were going to be.
Uh-huh. Well, we've got him covered.
My grandmother Brown's father, he's Mr. Nugent, great grandpa Nugent, and we used to go down and stay a week with them down. They had a big farm down in Brayboro. And one time, he was in his 80s, and he was fixing a piece of farm machinery, and he put the wheel on this. It was like a Laurel and Hardy movie. Then the other wheel would fall off. Then he put that one on, and he kept working on the thing, and he put down the thing, and he turned to me and he said, "Well, to hell with the Pope and Paddy Maguire." And I didn't hear that again. Did anybody go down to hear that play at the...
Yeah, I heard.
You heard,
They
you know?
used that expression.
Yeah, they kept yelling that thing, and I didn't know that that's where I'd first heard it. I was only 10 years old, and I was in my late 60s when...
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, I knew your grandfather, and I'm sure Elmer and Jean Jackman and Elmer Graham and all those did business with your grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was a fine man, so we asked these questions. It's nice to hear what the grandson...
You know that in all the years I knew him, and I was 30-something when he died, he only spoke harshly to me once. That was when he found out that I had paid $50 for Von Haven's Jet Cavalier. That was a pedigreed Cocker Spaniel I bought.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Now, as my cousin Bass said, if he knew you'd paid $900 for Blarn Squire Livingstone, he'd probably shot me right on the spot.
Well, your father and mother bought a dog one time from your aunt, did they not?
Oh, well, yes, they.
A famous dog in Lakefield. Good history.
Yeah, yes, and that was an excellent
Tell
dog.
us about that one.
Well, my Aunt Eileen, she married their first husband. That tells you something right there. It's a guy called by the name of Jimmy Welch, and they lived over in Judge Collins's place. Okay, so anyway, they bought this registered Irish setter, beautiful dog, and they're going to breed the dog. So Dad said, I want one of the pups. I want to buy one of the pups. So the pups were duly born, and Jimmy and Eileen decided they wanted to go to the depression was done. They wanted to go to Toronto, so they needed $40. So they brought the little dog over and put him down, and the dog was coal black. Coal black. And Dad said, well, this is supposed to be an Irish setter. And Eileen always had an answer. She said, all Irish setters are black when they're born. At the end of a year, the black fur goes out and the red hair comes in. Well, Dad had never heard that one, but it was a sweet little dog, and he wasn't going to get it back. Gave him their $40. And several days later, he got a collar and leash, and he takes the dog downtown. And he meets Charlie Thompson, the tailor.
Charles Ridpath's grandfather, Molly's father.
Molly's father, that's right, Charlie Ridpath's grandfather. Charlie looks at the dog. He said, did you buy one of those dogs? Dad said, yes. He said, it's got quite an ancestry. Dad said, what do you know about it? Well, he says, it took place in my backyard. Dad says, who's the father? He said, Bill Charlton's Great Dane Duke.
We just thought we'd spring that one on you, Carl. John, thank you for that. Now, were the Browns and the Grylls, were they of any devout political adherents, more or less?
Yes,
You've already admitted 2 mistakes.
No, they were Tories.
Through and through. Now, you had an uncle who was Beth McMaster's father,
Yeah.
Uncle Jack.
Uncle Jack.
And I knew Uncle Jack briefly when he was in Lakefield. Maybe you'd just tell he was a very accomplished man.
Yes, he was Reva Bancroft anytime he wanted the job. He was warden of the county of Hastings. He was instrumental in arranging the big extension onto the Belleville General Hospital. The airport is called Jack Brown Airport. That okay?
That's wonderful.
All right.
That's the type of things I was wanting you to tell us.
All right.
Because he was a Lakefield boy, you know.
Oh, yes.
And we're very interested in the success of Lakefield people.
Yeah, he was
One of our Lakefield people has gone on to be, say, a founding mother of Showplace. You know anything about that lady?
Yes, I know her well. I know her well.
Could you give us a little description of her? She was Beth Brown, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah.
She married Stuart McMaster. She was teacher, writer, author. She arranged for Showplace. She was the big
And she's right here with us this evening.
She's right here. Wave at them, Beth, please.
You might mention that I'm now chair of United Way, and would they please all give?
Yes.
That's only after they join here.
John, we're going to get back to you
Yeah.
personally, and we don't want this to be embarrassing at all. What year were you born?
1929.
1929.
Now, my parents were married in 1926, and I was born in 1929, so there's no scandal whatsoever connected with me.
No.
All right, fine.
Well, at that stage.
Yeah.
But I want to show you one
Oh,
little
my
thing here. Like,
God.
we have a photo here, and it's taken of John David Grylls and Jean Spence, 1932, and he's got a grin on his face, and Jean has her skirt up. Now, I'd like to pass it around just while we're talking
I
here.
have a birthday party picture.
In fact, I'm going to give you that one, and I'm going
And
to pass
Jean
this one.
Jean has her. She's got her sweater up, her skirt up, and that's the birthday party picture. And so she mentioned it one time, and I said, well, why do you think we invited you to the party?
That's why she got to so many parties?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've known Jean for a long time, and she's a decent girl. I think if there's any problem here, it's you.
Well, I'm the one that's got the grin on his face.
John, where were you born? What house? Do you remember? Or
I was born at the old Nichols Hospital.
in the Nichols Hospital.
That's right.
Okay. And who was the attending doctor?
Dr. Housen.
Dr. Housen. And how many different houses have you lived in Lakefield in your period of time?
Well, Dad bought the house over here in 1931, and we've lived
On
there
King
since.
Street,
On
where
King
you are.
Street, yeah.
Oh.
Now, they did have that apartment over the Royal Bank.
And the tent.
Oh, yeah, the tent, yeah. Oh, I better tell you a little bit, just a second now, about the apartment. We rented the apartment from Billy Casement, whose mother
Was Nelson.
was a Nelson.
You kept coming back to the Nelson.
That's right. This was round 2 of the Nelson. Round 2.
And what was Mr. Casement? He must have been a friend of the family also, huh?
I don't know, but
Well, he had a big funeral. He was a well-liked man.
Oh yes, it was this. Listen, Casement's funeral was the social event of 1938.
Yeah.
Everybody.
They wished he'd have died sooner because 37 was a dry year.
Yes. Yes, he was.
It was one of the biggest funerals ever held in Lakefield.
That's right. They had members of Parliament, senators, judges, magistrates.
Yeah. And okay, and was he of the conservative faith?
No,
also?
he was not. He was a Grit.
I see.
Okay,
Okay.
just a second. His very best friend was Dr. J.R. Fraser.
Oh.
Dr. J.R. Fraser, and when they called an election, they didn't speak. J.R. Fraser and Billy Casement did not speak from the time they issued the King's election writ until after the election. They didn't speak. They never speak. After the election, they became best friends again.
Isn't that something? John, as most of you know, some of us had 10, 15, 17 years of school life. John had 43, 44 years of school days.
He was just a little slow, that's why.
Yeah.
He wasn't too slow here.
I knew what you were up to.
John, when you first started, like going back to your Lakefield days, your first teacher? Kindergarten?
I miss Kid.
This
We all
kid.
do, yeah.
Uh-huh. And who was the principal of the public school in those days?
T.W. Chaplin.
Oh, yes. Oh, you'd get good marks. He was a neighbor.
No, not then he wasn't.
Oh, he wasn't?
No, he was up on the hill then.
I see.
Yeah.
I just met a lady this evening who lives in their home. Just
Oh, yes, yes.
living in their
yeah.
home. Mrs. Jefferson.
Yeah, Jefferson.
Kathy. Yes. And no doubt in public school you had many outstanding teachers, didn't you? Do you care to comment on any?
I had three outstanding teachers. The first was, and by the way, they're all still living. I had Thelma Corvette Medill. I'm going to call her Thelma. And she got me interested. I was always in plays throughout high school and all this, and it has to have a beginning. So the first play I was in was a Halloween play, this time of year, and Greg Knox drew a wagon loaded with pumpkins across the stage, and Hastings Wong said, "Oh, look, a wagon." Now wait for it. My line was, "A red one."
That's right.
That was it, a red one. Then we put on the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and John Twist was the Pied Piper, and Greg Knox was the mayor, and I was one of the 4 counselors, and all the other kids were rats. They went squeaking around.
Yeah.
And Thelma thought it would be nice if the boys all had long trousers. Well, boys didn't wear long trousers; they wore briefs. God, I hated them. I'm not very fond of trousers either. But so anyway, I said, well, I have long trousers. I can wear them. She kind of looked at me. Now, my father's sister had sent me a cowboy suit with long things and chaps, kerchief, check shirt, hat, and a holster, holster with two holsters.
Hop-along Grylls.
So I have mother's away in Toronto visiting her cousin, and I go home and I said to Dad, I'm in a play and I have to wear my cowboy suit. Oh, fine. We didn't even argue, make a federal case out of that. Hang on. I walked into the room. I put the thing on, put the suit on, everything like that. I even had the cap guns and everything, 2 of them, nickel-plated. And, well, there you go. I look more like Tom Mix than I did a counselor.
But you would make an impression upon your classmates.
Oh, yes.
I guess so.
Yes.
John, then you got through public school. Did you get a recommendation, do you know?
No, I never got recommended for anything in my life. No. I had to write my entrance. My mother was weeks getting over that. I had to write my entrance. You know, only the dumb kids had to do that.
Well, you did pretty well. You perseverance and application will make up for a lot of education, won't it?
One thing that happened in Thelma Medill's room, the Berlin Olympics were on, 1936.
Uh-huh.
And she thought it would be very nice if we made a scrapbook. You know, anybody could make a scrapbook. So I got access to papers, and I went a beautiful scrapbook. She only gave me a B. And then when I looked at it, think about it later on, the only way I could possibly have gotten an A for that scrapbook was if I'd a member of the Hitler Youth. Because it was full of pictures of Hitler and Hess and Goering and all those guys. I don't even think Jesse Owens got into it.
No. That's when you went into high school, who was the principal of the high school?
J.F. Harvey.
Yeah, and the high school in those days was a joint building with the public school?
That's right.
So almost everybody in each public and high knew one another some way or another. Huh?
That's right.
And Mr. Harvey was there. And who were some of your memorable high school teachers?
Well, Mr. Harvey was one. He was a fantastic Shakespeare teacher.
Oh, was he?
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
My goodness. And he made us memorize.
I see. That's what I was wanting to ask you. Yeah, can you recite any poetry that you learned in either public or high school? Well, we'll move on to the next one. John, how about the facilities? I know it was a modern school. There was central air, no doubt.
We're up here?
At the public and high school. Any comments on the facilities?
Well, they were better than the ones I got out in the rural schools, I'll tell you that right now.
Okay.
But they were good. They had running water and all that sort of thing.
Okay. Where did you have your commencement exercises, your graduation?
The town hall.
In the town hall,
Yeah.
eh? The classmates, who were some of your contemporaries?
Well, there was Greg Knox, Jack Chittick, Betsy Hurst, Don Nichols.
Okay. How did you, by that time you had bypassed Jean, eh? Jean's.
Well, she was
I
there.
was way ahead of them.
Remember one thing, Jean is older than I am.
George Kelly, a classmate of yours?
He was a class behind,
He
or
never
2 class
forgets
behind.
I see.
Remind me.
John, did you take part in the Army Cadets then?
Yes, yeah.
Uh-huh. And
Yeah.
any
Well, we
thoughts on them? Or?
Oh, we won the war. That's all I'm going to make any comment about.
Okay.
I had, we can get back to the public school bit. I was very fortunate. 1937 and 38, and 38 and 39. I was in grade 4 and grade 5, and I was taught by Robert Spence. And I think I owe more to that man than I know to anybody else in education. I learned more pedagogy from him, just remembering things that he did, than I ever learned at the
Who
Peterborough.
was Robert Spence?
That girl's big brother.
And he was a teacher?
He was a
good
yes,
one.
yes, he was wonderful. He got us reading, and he went into his room, and the first day of September, and the room was all decorated up. Nothing more soul damning to have a kid go in a room and it's nothing, just nothing. He got us interested in stamps. He got us interested in. I was always interested in maps. Still am. He had maps and posters, and he was always sending away getting things for us. Booklets on this, booklets on that.
He'd be doing that with his own money in those days, would he not?
I don't know. It could have been samples. I remember one day he came in and we all got a sample bar of Lifebuoy soap. Now maybe he was trying to tell us something. I don't know. It could have been. And he taught us folk dancing. Folk dancing. I danced on the stage. Well, I wasn't the only one. There was a whole crew of us doing a folk dance. I danced with Connie's late sister Winnie.
At the town hall?
Yeah, right in the town hall there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And in one of the geographics, I remember following, he had all these old National Geographics, and we used to go and get those. And the explorations of Roy Chapman Andrews. Do you know, about 4 months ago, somebody came out with a book on the life of Roy Chapman Andrews, and I thought, my God, I remember he learned about him from Bob Spence. So I went down to Edna. Edna got me the book. I'm doing a second reading on it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's nice.
And it was a memorable time, September 1938, and a certain man said, he told me yesterday, and today he has issued a statement that after the Sudeten-German question is settled, that is the end of Germany's territorial demands in Europe. Munich. And boy, Bob really taught us that. The Munich business, yeah.
Okay, we actually don't want to get into everything that you did learn.
Go on.
We can't cover the whole curriculum.
All right.
Following high school, what did you do?
Went to Peterborough Normal School.
Yeah. Now tell me this. When I came along, it was teachers' college. Why did they call it normal school? Was there a school for the abnormal?
I think it came from the French expression école normale. I could be wrong.
Yeah. But that would still mean normal school in French.
That's right.
And why?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Like Ridpath School, the kids up there know why they call it Ridpath.
I certainly hope they do.
John, your music. When
Yeah.
did you develop an interest in music?
Well, I studied with my great aunt,
Miss Grylls.
Miss Grylls, and then she sort of thought I should move on a little bit. So Mother called G. Winder Smith up at the Grove School to see if I could take a lesson from Agnes Logan Green, who is still alive. And so Mr. Smith said, we have a vacancy, but he has to realize that if a student at the school wants it, he'll be bumped. I studied with her for a year and a half before somebody wanted that space, so that was lucky.
Did you study piano or,
Piano,
or
yeah.
music in general? Or
No,
what?
piano with Agnes Logan Green.
I see.
Then I studied with the nuns at St. Cecilia's Convent. Then I was doing music seriously, taking theory and harmony and form and counterpoint and all those.
Oh, I well know those things. John, when you graduated from normal school, were there any other Lakefield students in your class?
Yes, we had Greg Knox,
Oh, yeah.
Mary Spencer Dubček,
Uh-huh.
Doreen Crow.
Okay. Uh-huh.
They'd all gone to Lakefield High School. The four of us all were in grade 13 at Lakefield High School.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And so you get out of normal school, and your first job.
Lang. I taught at Lang.
Down where the Century Village is now.
Yes, that's right.
And big paying job, John?
$155 a month for 10 months.
$1,550 a year.
That's right.
Yeah. 10% to the teacher superannuation.
That's right.
Right on.
And by the way, you had to set enough aside to go to summer school.
You had to go to summer school?
You bet you did. If you were going to get anywhere in teaching, you had to go to summer school.
I see. How'd you get that job? Did you have Paul?
What, Lang? No, they just came and just like a slave market.
You were spoken for, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How many pupils did you have in the group?
I had 45 students in 8 grades. I had about 5 or 6 in the entrance class, and they had to write the examination because a first-year teacher could not recommend students.
Oh, let's see.
And I had 10 beginners. They
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
know how to put their clothes on. Oh my God!
How did you get all the lessons? Like you could only teach one lesson per. How did you? A lot of homework at nights.
Yeah.
A lot of lesson plans, eh? And of course.
You know, all the time I was down there 2 years, and not one time did I ever have anybody say, you know, we're going to have to send some help in for John Grylls. No, they didn't say that.
No, they didn't. Yeah. And facilities, they pretty up to date.
Well, it was.
You always a fresh pail of water there.
Yes, pail a day toilets. Pail a day now.
John, then you went from there. You say to
Number 6 Duro,
number 6 Duro.
Porcupine Hill.
Okay.
Yeah,
And how long were you there?
2 years.
And how long were you at Lang?
2.
Yeah. How long how many years would you say it takes a teacher to wear out their welcome?
I don't know, too.
No, John.
I don't know.
I know. No, never.
Never.
You'd be a great teacher. I know that, John.
So,
You like your pupils and you want to see them successful, so that, there's
What
two
happens
good
if you got
qualities.
sick, John?
excuse me?
What happens if you got sick? What happens if you got sick? What would happen in
Illness.
the school class?
Oh, they'd bring a supply teacher in.
Would they?
Oh, yeah. K.O. Birkin had a whole slew of them there. He shipped them out.
John, eventually you went on and you got your degree, a Bachelor of Arts degree, or? And did you have a major in it, or?
I majored in history and minored in English. I went to Western.
I know that. Yeah, that's too bad. but so, and what year did you finish your degree, John?
Class of 62.
62. Oh, congratulations. That was a lot of summers spent. And I know you told me one time that you had the pleasure of spending a summer studying American history at the University in Tennessee in Knoxville.
That's right.
That'd be a nice experience.
Wonderful.
Yeah. When you were a child, your family doctor was Dr. whom?
Oh, Dr. Alec Fraser.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he did he not educate your father in anesthesiology?
My grandfather.
Oh, your grandfather. Could
Yeah,
you share that story
they-
with the people? Because Dr. Fraser was a famous village doctor. He saved more lives in this village than you ever imagined,
Yeah.
and probably euchred a few also. But anyhow, tell us that story, John.
Dr. J.R. Fraser. No, that was Dr. Alec Fraser. And his
Okay.
father was Dr. J.R. Fraser. He was sort of semi-retired. Now, in those days, they used to take your tonsils out on the kitchen table. J.R. would come over, the old man, and he'd give you the anesthetic. Well, and then Alec could yank the tonsils out, and that was it. Well, my Aunt Elizabeth, or Betty as they call her, had to have her tonsils out. So Alec came over, but he came over by himself. And Grandma said, well, where's your father? Oh, he says, you don't need to pay him $10. He said, I can show Herb how to give an anesthetic. My grandfather. He said, I'll show Herb how to give an anesthetic. So he put a mask and gown on him and all this. And he said, now Herb, I'm going to scrub up, and you, when I tell you to put so many drops on the thing, put it over. And he always called her the girl. You're always the girl or the boy. He never called you by name.
Oh.
And so anyway, he puts the thing, you know, so many drops, and finally she went, and Alec goes the tonsils out. Well, she was just a little girl. My grandmother thought she'd stay with her that night, you know, sleep with her. So about 3 o'clock in the morning, there's a knee in my grandmother's back and a flashlight in her face. And Dr. Alex says, "Don't move, Mrs. Brown, I just want to check the girl's throat." 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd walked into the house, found the room, put her knee, right? My grandmother was terrified.
But at least he was making house calls. John, who was your dentist when you were a child? Dr. Renwick? Dr. Campbell?
I had them both from time to time, but I went to Dr. J.J. Cragg in Peterborough.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I see. And where did you buy most of your groceries? Any particular store?
We used to go to Spence's. We bought this, then we went to Crawford's Butcher Shop.
Okay,
Yeah.
Theodore, eh?
No. Oh, yeah, Teddy.
Teddy,
Yeah.
yeah. And who'd you get your milk from? I can tell you that.
First
He was
Darling.
a next door neighbor.
First Darling.
First Darling, okay.
Yeah.
And then Charlie Hunter, no doubt.
Yeah, I guess so.
He was a successor to Perry. Oh, no, he wasn't.
He wasn't.
Oh, okay. You're a shoemaker? Did you have your shoes repaired in those days? Or did you just go out and buy new?
Glenn. Glenn?
Did you ever have a pair?
Maybe. Yes, that's what I got about.
Did you ever have a pair of shoes half soled or anything?
Oh, yes, lots of
Glenn
times.
Wanamaker, right?
Glenn Wanamaker. And
Mr. Chapel.
Walter Chappell
Yeah.
used to do
Right.
work before he
Yeah.
went to the
Yeah. And your druggist? Where did you buy any of your sundries? and
E.H. Northey.
that? Uh-huh.
E.H. Northey. Yeah.
And what was the prominent funeral homes when you were a child? Where was there one or more? Or?
Well, there weren't any. They waked you in the house.
Okay. So any of your family have the wakes in the house?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, most of them probably
Yeah.
did.
And who did the attendance of the Hendren funeral home?
Webster's were there,
Okay.
and well, then the Hendrons, yes.
Yeah. What type of fuel did you burn in your house? What did you use for fuel? Wood?
Yes, and then coal.
Coal.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
we used to buy.
And
a lot of
where'd you
wood.
buy your wood?
Haven't the slightest idea.
Where'd you get your coal?
Oh, we
Probably W.J. Charles.
Double J. Charles, yeah, that's right.
Uh-huh. Any bus service when you were a child? or anything
Wonderful
like that?
bus service. Peterborough, 6:15, 7:15, 8:15.
Where'd you catch it?
Usually the Northeast Drugstore. They once had the concession to sell the tickets.
Okay. What bus line was it?
Ferguson?
Oh, yeah.
During wartime.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And taxis, you ever use taxis or anything like that?
Not in Lake.
Did your family have a car?
No, we didn't.
Uh-huh. But you don't, did you have a cottage? Did your family have a
Yeah,
cottage?
we had a cottage.
And where was it, John?
It was up on Clear Lake, and my dad had just gotten a job with Ontario Hydro in 1936. The first thing we had to do was pay the mortgage off on the house, which we did. Then my Beth's father came to see Dad when he said, "I want you to buy a lot on Clear Lake. It's going to cost you $150. Dad says, "I haven't $150. He says, "You can't afford not to buy it." Uncle Jack had bought 2 lots from Joe Iyett, and he asked Joe to build a road in. And Joe says, "I'm not building a road in for 2 lots. Well, he said, "If I sell 2 more, will you build a road?" Yes, he built a road in for 4 lots. So, Dad was walking down the street and he met John McKercher, the bank manager.
Uh-huh.
And he said to him, "There's no way the Royal Bank would lend me $150, is there?" And he says, "Of course they will. Get in here." Dad walked out with $150 and bought the lot.
Yeah. And do you know that lot now is probably worth 1,000 times that?
Oh, I know.
150,000.
I know, yeah.
Did you ever take a train ride when you were a child in Lakefield? Did you ever ride the train from Lakefield?
The one thing my mother wanted me to, two things my mother wanted me before I started school. She wanted me to have a ride on a train, and she wanted me to see an orange parade.
Oh, yeah.
You know. And the capital city of Orangism was Lindsay.
Oh, yeah, every year.
Yeah. So they ran a special train from Lakefield to Peterborough to Lindsay. And that was the first train trip I had.
Grandpa go on it with you? What do you remember?
He was in the parade.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I don't remember him being on the train.
I'm just trying to trigger some memories of your childhood, John. What are any memories of the pavilion?
Oh, yes.
Dance pavilion?
Oh, yes. When I was in high school, we used to dance at the pavilion.
Okay.
School would have dances at the pavilion.
Uh-huh.
We also used to have dances at the rotunda of the Lakefield Hotel.
Oh.
While
Where was the rotunda?
well, the lobby.
Oh, okay.
Lobby of the Lakefield Hotel.
We're more familiar with the latter one.
All right, that's fine. And you had to dance around Butts Northey, C.J. Davis, Norm Hughes, and Walter Cologne, because they were playing bridge every night. They played bridge
Oh, yeah.
there too.
Uh-huh.
And they had their little place. They never even took the table down. They come there every night, played bridge.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any memories of any steamboats? Were there any steamboats around?
Oh, yes.
You remember?
Yes, I used to go up to the cottage on the Islinda.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
And would it drop you off, pull into the
No,
dock, or
no.
go to Kawartha Park?
No,
or-
no. I got off at Young's Point and walked. We had a path through the woods.
Oh.
It took us to the cottage.
I see. When did you dispose of your cottage, John? What year, do you remember?
Well, let's see. Dad died in '73. I would say the spring of '72.
Okay, Lakefield Fair, any memories of Lakefield Fair?
Oh yes, that was that. We used to get a half day off to go to Lakefield Fair, and we also got a free ticket. Oh, I always went to. I still go to Lakefield
Ever
Fair.
win any prizes for exhibits or anything like that? Or?
No, I don't remember. I don't think I did.
No.
No.
How about the telephone service? Do you always have a telephone in your home?
Just about all the time, yeah.
All the time you lived in your home, was it have electricity?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes.
You must be in some of the influent, because I know many people who can remember when they got the first telephone and when their house was wired. Because you were wired years ago.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, well. Anyway, that's good. All in your memory forever, you had that in your home. So it must have been a pretty good home when you.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And.
Now I remember when we didn't have a phone, but I don't think it was for too long.
Yeah. Well, John, that's just about everything that I've asked you without getting. Now, this is in jest, but I've been saying that I was going to do this. I've been telling everybody I was going to do this. John and I had an agreement that I would not ask him anything but his sex life. However, at this time, I'd like to take the opportunity to see if he'd like to volunteer anything about his sex life. Anyway, enough of that, John.
Enough of that, John.
John, I have finished my questioning of you. I just had to get that so you can comment in, John.
I was waiting for it.
Okay. There's some things I'm sure that you would like to share with the group that I haven't asked
I don't really know. I think you've covered everything very well.
Would you be entertaining some questions then, maybe from the audience?
Sure.
Yeah. Mary, please.
I just wondered if you could talk briefly about the canoe building that your grandfather was involved in and his captain work on the steamship.
Well, he was a canoe builder, as you have stated, and all the canoe people were in the Lakefield Canoe Company. And every time they had the deer hunt, they closed the canoe company. They all went on the deer hunt. So they went on the deer hunt. When they came back, J.G. Brown had made copies of all the blueprints and set himself up in the Brown Boat Company in Mrs. Jefferson's barn. So they're not just skunks there, Mrs. Jefferson.
Okay.
And so that's
That was how Brown's Boat Company got started.
how it got started.
Oh. Uh-huh. Any other, Harold?
Yes, Harold.
John, I just wanted to comment, I always enjoyed your father's company when he would be in my dad's blacksmith shop. A group of the political party that, I don't know if I think they were on both sides sometimes.
Get where?
And when I was a kid around town, your dad was instrumental in helping me purchase the first 22 I guess I ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember before fishing season or hunting season, you always took the gun or the fishing rod to the powerhouse and got it repaired.
Yeah,
I believe he even
that's
had
right.
a shooting range downstairs to sight the rifle in. And if it was on night shift, you could pick up your shotgun before it off. And just a little point of it.
Any other questions? Mary, I don't think I've answered your.
His captain work, your
Oh,
grandfather's
yes.
captain work.
Well, you see, you make canoes in the wintertime, and that was his job. You sell canoes in the summertime. He was not in the sales end of the canoes. So that's why he got his captain's certificate, so that in the summer he could drive boats. Now, there was a Dr. Race, a dentist from Brooklyn, New York, and he used to bring his boats down in the fall. Grandpa would, during the winter, would look after them, repair them and all this sort of thing. And one day Dr. Race came down. It was quite evident he was very upset about something. And Grandpa said, what's the matter? Well, he said, I bought this launch. We've got it delivered. And he said, they tell me that you can't drive it unless you have a captain's certificate. So my grandfather went to work for him. He worked with him for quite a few years up at his island. He was a general factotum and kept the boats going and drove the launch, all this sort of thing. And then that's what he did.
And your grandfather Brown?
Grylls.
Grylls, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And John, we're living in a modern world here. Well, you have any thoughts on amalgamation that we've just had, or any comments you wish to make on that?
No, I don't like the world situation right now. All during the war, they had the newspapers came out, and it was just all full of war news. Then August 1945, the war ended. And there was sort of a vacuum there. Then in 1946, probably one of the most wonderful things happened. A girl in Hamilton cut up her husband. Evelyn Dick. She cut up her. Do I ever wish that some woman would cut up her husband and we could get all that nonsense off the newspapers? Have you seen they just keep banging the pages and they do the same thing? A good axe murder. Or during the war, Sir Harry Oakes was murdered. They never did find out who did that.
Well, spoken like a true bachelor, you'd like to see it. John, that certainly would get our minds off the events following September the 11th.
Yes.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions for John? Last chance to get him.
John, you mentioned a man by the name of Casement. Is Casement Island on Stony Lake? Would that be named after him? Yeah.
Well, the name, yes, I would say so.
That's what I thought.
Casement Lane, you know where that is, going up to the cemetery, up the hillside? Casement Lane, that was named after him. And he's buried in Hillside Cemetery, and he's in an underground mausoleum. He is the same as the day he died.
Didn't know they could do that.
And he was the postmaster in Lakefield, and I think he was succeeded by your school principal.
Yes, that's right.
Chaplain, was he
Mr.
not? As
Chaplain,
postmaster.
Chaplain.
And Casement also was a descendant, as you mentioned, of the Nelsons.
His mother was a Nelson.
Okay. Yeah.
John, he lived with Miss Nelson.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, for
Oh, did he?
years. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
that was his home.
Nettie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, they were relatives.
They were cousins. Distant cousins.
Okay. Well, if we haven't any further oh, John, I want you to mention, it's always been a large part of your life as your church. Your family has always been involved in the church, and I just you've been involved in the church as organist and as adherent and so on. What church did you?
I'm a confirmed member. I am not an adherent.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, so you don't believe, but you belong.
Yes. When that church was built, 3 generations of my family worshiped there. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, and my father.
At the time of it being built? Oh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And 3 generations of my family served communion in that church. My great-grandmother was one of the first woman elders in the United Church. Now, all they let her do was uncover the elements. Then she had to go and sit down. The men took over. But that was a step in the right direction, I guess. My mother was an elder, and I was on the board. I served communion there too. So there were 3 generations: my grandmother, my mother, and myself.
Yeah, I'm glad we covered that because we hadn't touched on that. Did you ever, were you an organist in the United Church?
I played in Lakefield United Church for 3 years. I played the organ, and Don Landry was the conductor of the choir, and then Quirt McKinney from the normal school for 2 years. Okay?
Uh-huh.
And then I have played services in every Protestant church in Lakeville.
Warsaw.
And at Warsaw, yeah. Played at St. Mark's, Warsaw. I played at St. Aidan's, Young's Point. I played at Young's Point United, and I was 2 years at Young's Point United, 2 years at St. Aidan's Anglican Church in Young's Point. And
Was that to supplement your income?
yes, yes. Well, you know, these teachers' pensions. Gotta do something.
And the organist was paid a lot, didn't it?
Oh, yes.
Sandra?
John,
Yes.
your mother and my mother belonged to the Young Adults Club that was part of the church. And I have some wonderful pictures of when they were in plays. Did your mother ever do any writing to do with plays or act in, say, Peterborough?
Okay, first of all, my mother was not a member of the Young Adult Society. She used to go and help them with their plays. I was a member. I was vice president 1 year and president another year of it. And they used to put on plays, as you stated, and your mother was prominent in the plays. And mother used to direct them. She'd often play in the plays, but she wasn't a member of the Young Adults, no.
One thing we didn't mention is that for a number of years, your mother was the correspondent reporter for the Peterborough Examiner.
25 years.
25 years. So a good number of the things that we read in the newspaper, in our research and so on, from the Examiner regarding Lakefield were written by your mother.
John, who was the 3rd teacher? You said there were 3 teachers, and there was Bob and Thelma.
Oh.
Who was the 3rd one?
Marion Comrie.
Oh, yeah.
She came from Keene, and she was very, very up in modern, her methods, very, very modern in her methods. She used to get guest speakers. Now, we were in grade 6, you see. She used to get, well, one time she wanted us to learn about the gold rush. So she invited Charlie Biggle. You know the caretaker? He was custodian at the school. She had Charlie Biggle. Then a very wonderful man in Lakefield took Dickens' Christmas Carol and made it into a dynamic monologue. She had him come and he starts off, "Old Marley was dead." Reverend George Kelly, fantastic. He had the kids eating right out of his hand. Then we had a little boy His parents had sent him from, his father was in the colonial administration in Jamaica. And, you know, they're always worried about the fact that there might be a German attack on the Caribbean islands. So they sent him up here to be with his grandmother. He was only in grade 4, and she invited him to come, and by golly, the kid did a good job talking about Jamaica. He was only in grade 4. Yeah.
One thing you didn't mention, you never mentioned anything about the Wongs, and I don't care which one you were in class, they were always head of the class.
Yeah.
For years.
Yeah.
George and Mary and
Lily,
Lil and Rosie and
Rosie,
Hastings.
and Jesse.
Yes.
Yeah.
You couldn't get ahead of them. They always came first, no matter which one.
John, when this has been videotaped, when it has been
Is it in living color?
edited and
In color.
No, good.
when it has been edited and purged, you'll get a copy.
All right, perfect.
On behalf of the members, I'd like to thank you for your attendance. Some of the things you said are wonderful and priceless and will be greatly enjoyed by audiences 20, 30, 50 years from now. Thank you very much.
My
John.
pleasure.
Mr. President, you know, your membership's only $10, and I've had more than $10 worth of fun tonight. I'd like to join.
You know that guy.
See me after.
You know Will Cleveland, don't you?
Yes, I spoke to that gentleman on the phone